strategy, you will always see one thing. They look to see who is in the road to their path to power, and they are not about improving the conditions of people. They are about taking power. As Lenin said, the dictatorship of the proletariat is power. Power gained and maintained by violence, power unlimited by any laws. Now, who's in the road? Well, they identify, defame, and destroy. Now, the Zulus are a distinctive nation, 6 million people, twice the population of New Zealand. They have a king, they have a de facto prime minister in Buthelezi, who's also a member of the royal family.
Revolutionaries dare not allow the politics of negotiation to get off the ground because it spells doom, of course, for their own objectives. They do not want reconciliation in this country between black and white. They want a more deeply polarized society because that suits their plans. They want the economy destroyed in this country because they want a black population with a deeper sense of desperation. They are not employing violence to drive South Africa into a democratic future. In fact, they despise multi-party democracy, and they want only to grab power for themselves.
We have a lot of organizations within South Africa. We have a lot of leaders within South Africa who believe in peaceful change. We have Chief Mangope of Bophuthatswana, we have Gaitsho Buthelezi of KwaZulu, we have Chief Cedric Dr. Patudi of the Northern Transvaal, Basotho. We have also Professor Nsanwisi and a host of other leaders who are for positive change, which is non-violent.
So they are identified for attack because they're totally opposed to the South African government's policy of apartheid. They believe that the remedy is by discussion with that government, just as the several million of the Zion Christian Church think the same thing, and of the independent churches do, and that
this is
within South Africa. And this creates a very large number of people who believe in discussion.
So successful has the African National Congress's public relations campaign been that those people in the West whom one might expect to have an informed opinion on who speaks for whom in South Africa show a sign of having that informed opinion. For them, there is only the ANC.
I can't for the life of me understand how Malcolm Fraser could make the statement that Buthelezi had no influence. While I was there, he decided to call certain meetings. He could get 70 or 80,000 people without any trouble in a stadium, or 100,000. And if he was worried about the comrades, he'd say, bring your assegais, that's the Zulu spear. And then no comrade came anywhere near them. Now, Buthelezi refers to Oliver Tambo and the African National Congress, which fights South Africa from outside, as the foreign mission, whereas he keeps on his campaign inside. When Richard Carlton said to him, he said, why don't you attack the South African government? He said, what, militarily do you mean? He said, yes. He said, what, an unarmed people fight the most powerful army in Africa? He said, I oppose their apartheid. And of course, he, like Bishop Mawani and the others, believes that they will get places by constant negotiation.
To judge from media reports and public statements by our leaders, the ANC is the alternative government of South Africa. It claims to be, and is widely accepted as, the only authentic voice of black South Africans.
Mrs. Mandela, I appreciate your time. I hope this interview doesn't cause you any problem. Thank you very much for talking with us.
With pleasure.
In South Africa, Mrs. Winnie Mandela, wife of Nelson Mandela, who, if freed and was allowed to stand for election and a free vote, would almost certainly be Prime Minister of South Africa. And we'll be back with more in just a moment.
Thus, over the years, the media have enabled the ANC to present Mrs. Mandela in the tragic role of martyr's wife. Nelson Mandela is serving a term of life imprisonment for sabotage and advocating the overthrow of the South African government. His wife, Winnie Mandela, is able to speak to the media. For foreign consumption, she presents a picture of reasonableness and non-violence.
I have never personally believed in any violence, and no sane person can believe in any violence.
For home consumption, the picture is quite different.
We have got in these hands our power, the people's power. We are not prepared for any so-called reforms to apartheid. The regime can go to hell. Power to the people! Power to the people! We have stones, we have boxes of matches, we have with our necklaces, we shall liberate this country.
Now, it's significant on this business of necklacing that you had Winnie Mandela, the wife of Nelson Mandela, saying, with our boxes of matches and our necklaces, we shall liberate this country. I can't see that it attacks the power of the South African government at all, except in stopping negotiation.
Well, as far as Winnie Mandela is concerned, to me, she was never really a leader. She has only gained the leadership or heroism because of her husband. It's just that, you know, the world is making people heroes of people that have not been known by us here in South Africa. The only person that I knew very well was her husband, Nelson Mandela, because I used to be a member of the ANC, the Women's League.
But Oliver Tambo himself said this, which is a mild slap on the wrist for the comrades. Of course, we are not in favour of necklacing. We don't like necklacing. But we understand its origins. It originated from the extremes to which people were provoked by the unspeakable brutalities of the apartheid system.
What do you say about that?
Well, I think that's absolute rubbish. I mean, we have a resentment against the whites. That's what this is. Therefore, we burn to death in the most excruciating manner possible fellow blacks. It's not really an attack on the comrades. He probably didn't dare do so.
By clever public relations and well-funded lobbying, the Western world has gained the view that the ANC and its leaders, principally Oliver Tambo, are reasonable men who have been driven to violence and terror. Similarly, much of the West has been persuaded that anyone who does not support the ANC is a collaborator and sympathizing with the South African government.
And for instance, your foreign correspondents based in Johannesburg, I hardly ever see them. They have, in fact, even when I have big rallies, such as those that I have, only a couple of crews come. But you see, as far as the violence that is taking place in the township is concerned, you find that all of them go there and report that. I think that I don't say that that shouldn't be reported, but I think it's wrong to report just that, as if that is a complete picture, because that doesn't give a balance and a complete picture. So I've found that myself when I was in the United States, that in fact, even where I had briefings with many of them, I mean, my visit in the United States, because I didn't say the things that would strengthen what they've portrayed, that my visits and my utterances in the United States were not reported at all.
I support the ANC in its objectives. I am trying what I can to save this country. And I'm not saying that presumptuously.
Unfortunately, Bishop Tutu is the kind of person that if he says one thing today, he denies it tomorrow. So he's a bit tough to pin down. What he says in Australia, he'll deny in England. What he says in England, he'll deny in South Africa. Now, and besides that, Bishop Tutu is also a person who has no vested interest. He said one time, and I quote him again, that he said, when violence does escalate to a point where he cannot stand it any longer, he and his family are going to migrate to some other country. So he is that type of a person. He has opened out a gate, on a side gate for himself, that if things get worse, he can get out. Now, I am speaking here as a black who has nowhere else to go. And I feel that the only way we can find a solution is a solution. And I represent millions of other blacks who, unlike Bishop Tutu, cannot emigrate somewhere else when things get worse. They'll have to stay here and face it. And the only way they can do that is that we, together with those in power and all the racial groups, should come together and work out a future South Africa.
Those who tell us the moral thing to do is to embargo the South African economy and write off South Africa should tell us exactly what they believe will rise in its place. What foreign power would fill the vacuum if its ties with the West are broken?